Hello and welcome everyone. We're back here with Industry 4.0 Club, Manufacturing Future live stream. We're back after a fairly substantial hiatus. Been a lot of busy going on here. It almost seems like we've been part of the writers' strike. If you think about the timing here, but we weren't. We were just busy on other stuff here. But we're back here now, starting up here in our new fall season, and we're going to be striving to have a live stream about every other week. Together with all the other live streams that we have in Industry 4.0 Club. But so Ira and I, we're going to try to keep up here and come up with some interesting topics, interesting series, etc., that we're going to be starting out with. But here today, what we are doing here, we're having just a chat between the guys in automation here from our Industry 4.0 Club. All four founders are joining me here. Ira Sharp, my co-host, Jason Bean, Scott Phillips, and Ryan Treece. And we are just going to be having a conversation about what everybody's been seeing, both going to conferences and what else is going on with LinkedIn posts and whatever else you guys are following. So just a quick update on what's going on out there in automation, Industry 4.0, IoT, generative AI, whatever topics will come up here that's relevant for manufacturing. So quick introduction. My name is Jan Pingel, and when I'm not here with these great guys here, I am product leader for digital solutions at Ingersoll-Rand, where we are utilizing IoT to make our equipment smart and connected. Ira, on to you.
All right, thanks, Jan. So, hey, everybody out there, my name's Ira Sharp, and as Jan said, I'm a founder here at Industry 4.0 Club. But in addition to that, I'm actually the director of automation at Phoenix Contact, so responsible for all the automation components throughout the U.S. market, and get to look at a lot of different systems from factory automation to process automation, and just really enjoy jumping on and having chats about the latest and greatest in automation. So, yeah, thanks. I guess where do you want to go next, Jan?
Let's do Jason.
Hey, I'm Jason. So when I'm not taking part in the club, I'm the Industry 4 market specialist for Prepple and Fuchs in North America, where I just help our customers understand how they need to approach a digital transformation within their facility and how to get access to their data. So,
Great. Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan Treece, co-founder at Industry 4.0 Club. And then my day job is I work for Telit Centurion, and I'm part of our IoT platforms group. So we do a lot of protocol conversion, edge logic, different industrial IoT, smart manufacturing projects. So great to be here. Thanks.
Great. And Scott.
Last but not least, Scott Phillips. When I'm not working with these guys on the I4O Club, I do a couple things. One is I help manufacturers develop Industry 4.0 roadmap using a tool called i4Score. And then my other job is I manage an Industry 4.0 accelerator for the state of Michigan. And we talk to about 30 manufacturers bi-monthly to see what their problems and areas of interest are. And then we scout new Industry 4.0 technologies from around the world and bring them to Michigan to help our manufacturers be more competitive.
Great. Well, thanks for a quick introduction here. As I mentioned before, we got some guys on here with the finger on the pulse on automation for sure. And especially, I know Jason and Scott has been attending various conferences and actually met each other a couple of times on the conference trail here. So maybe if we start with just you two, kind of talk a little bit about what's the latest you've seen on the conferences on automation, where some of the trends going. Jason, if you want to start.
Okay, so I was actually just at the Canadian Manufacturing and Technology Show. What was it, last week in Toronto? And just over the summer, I've seen a shift in the topics that people are talking about. From a lot of the earlier shows, there was really a lot of focus around, getting in actual employees and retention and data analytics. The show in Toronto, it pretty much purely shifted to generative AI and where it plays within your facility. The average probably day on generative AI, multiple different organizations. I'm gonna love this because a little bit of a free wow this before we started. Most of those talks are superficial. Nobody's getting into the deep weeds in those talks on actually how to get to the data. It's just almost an assumption that the manufacturers have the data naturally available. And the simple truth is not very many of the manufacturers actually have the data available for generative AI to actually produce any value. I held my tongue quite a bit in a lot of those talks rather than getting up and contradicting somebody on stage as to their approach to generative AI and the value it brings. I've spent a lot of time over this past year looking at multiple different generative AI tools and using them from a tool perspective and actually trying to break them to see where they fit. I've seen some generative AI tools that are in development that are really impressive, but at the same time, kind of scary. Three companies I've seen that are looking at trying to create a cognitive, self-aware generative AI systems, which, when you look at it, has a lot of potential. Like, if you can just take apart, show it to a self-aware generative AI, and that's all of a sudden able to turn around and create that part with no programming on your end, that's pretty impressive on what it can do. And these organizations are doing it through, incorporating, advanced vision systems, sensors, tying directly into CAD models, and just trying to show either a 3D printing cell or a weld cell apart, and now having it actually create its own program to accomplish the task. But, we really kind of have to look at, the ethical considerations here is cognitive AI can be dangerous. Once we get AI actually starting teaching itself, we have to make sure we're putting in the guardrails to protect it.
So when you say cognitive AI, so my understanding of generative AI is it's really just an extensive of traditional model-based statistics kind of thing. You have a half of a sentence, and the system figure out what the next word is, and then from there it figures out what the next word is, etc. And so it's really not cognitive. And you remember there was this Google guy that got let go a couple months, well, not probably 6 months ago, when he was claiming that Google had a cognitive
sentient AI, right?
Exactly. And Google kept on saying, no, we don't, it's not cognitive, right? So where does because that's the first time I've heard from generative AI claiming that there's some cognitive. I mean, it seems very cognitive when you have a prompt engineering conversation with it, right? But in reality, it's still just based on statistics, right? So how are these companies kind of going in the direction of cognitive, or what's the difference there?
So the three that I've seen, and there's actually a fourth I'll be going in to see, that in talking to the CEO, I think they're probably the closest to a true cognitive. They're tying in, rather than human inputs into the generative AI system, they're tying in digital inputs. So it's, advanced camera systems that are examining the work area of scope. It's sensors in the area. It's tying into, directly into CAD programs and that. So basically, as you're developing on CAD, the AI is automatically starting to generate the actual workflow to produce the part.
Okay.
So are they truly cognitive?
Probably not.
Probably not, but they're getting there, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to equip the generative AI basically with eyes and ears so it can learn from its environment and create its own work instructions.
Interesting. And Ryan, you were recently at the AI conference in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
What was your perspective?
I got a lot. I got a lot to say about that. Yeah. Like Jason had said, right? Every time I talk to an AI company, the first thing I say, one, they all look at me like the AI startup, biz dev, salespeople will go, "Hey, our AI system does X, Y, Z," and they go, "Do you understand?" Yes, I understand, but I need to understand where you're getting your data from, right? And then it's almost always like Jason had mentioned, oh, the manufacturers have that and they do that part of the project. No, they don't. No, they don't. Oh, we'll just pull it from a SQL database. Okay, better. How are you getting the data from the machine to the SQL database? Confused look every time, right? Okay. How are you getting data from the torque controller, the sensors, the PLC, all the OT assets? And then how are you pulling it from all the IT databases? How are you pulling it from SAP? How are you pulling it from Oracle? How are you getting all of the data in one central place to process this? It's never been an issue of no one's been smart enough to come up with this way to detect anomalies in manufacturing. That's existed for a very long time. It's always been this legacy system, this hodgepodge of equipment, all these different mixed assets that are communicating on different technology platforms. So you could have one machine come in from Japan with a Mitsubishi or an Omron PLC. The next station could be coming from France or Germany with a Siemens PLC. And then you have the final leak test would be a Rockwell PLC made in the US, right? So these AI companies can go in and they might have it on a Rockwell PLC or a Mitsubishi PLC. But how are you doing that? And not only just for those brands, how are you doing the last 30 years of multiple generations of those processors who are also talking different protocols, right? So it's always been a challenge for me to see if an AI company is going to be successful in this business. What's your solution for that? How are you feeding data to your system? Is it scalable? Do you have one or two programmers that are just doing like a modified Modbus driver that they found on GitHub that everyone's using? That's not going to cut it out there, right? Because any solution, the end goal should be to scale across all of the enterprises, all the locations globally. And if you don't have that kind of forward-thinking data integration as part of your strategy, I think they're going to spin their wheels a lot doing, oh, we did a pilot and we didn't get out of the pilot phase, right? And so I hope that a lot more people, when they're evaluating these AI solutions, say, how are you getting the data? And then we need the requirements to pull it from this list of equipment, right? And I think building that in at the beginning, that long-term thinking would go a long way. But I ran into this last year at the AI conference in Austin and had the same experience. And I went back there to see if vendors were changing their tune. Almost all the companies that were there last year were not there this year, but there were new companies with the same problem, right? And so I see people entering the space. We have all these PhDs in AI, and I'm saying, okay, but hire a controls guy and then have him get a say in all of this data integration strategy. And so I'm still seeing that.
Yeah. And it is interesting because I feel like, we've all been doing this for a little while, and we talk a lot about IoT and digital transformation and all these different topics. And while AI seems to be the flavor of the day, I mean, the IoT analytics report, I love that CEO report. I'll be, posting about it here and probably this week, but it's littered with all the AI topic. I mean, I know that the amount of use of the term of AI, whether it be generative AI or AI in general or edge AI or all these different flavors, it's all there. But to your point, Ryan, I mean, it's so important to have the data, and not even have data, but have good data. And Scott, I know, this is one of the things that you help manufacturers with and trying to like architect and, move things around. And it's not a new challenge, right? It's kind of a classic problem of you have all these different data silos, all these different systems that are built to do what they do really, really well. And it's hard to argue with it because they work and they work really well. But it's getting to an era where you need this data democratization and you need to collect this information because you need to be able to do something with it to improve operations, whether it be AI, whether it be the sustainability, which is a big topic for companies, as well as employee retention and all these other things. All these things are super important, but it all comes down to data, which leads to information. And how are you going to make it all work? So I don't know. I guess maybe I'm just getting on the soapbox. I'm getting amped up. Ryan pregame got me amped up for this. So, but I think it's important, right? It's an important topic, and really understanding how you're going to do that data flow, how it's all going to work, and how are you going to scale it. And I don't want to go too far with this, but maybe we can circle back around to it. In my world, I do a lot with OEM machine builders, and I wonder how much of a play they have with all of this versus a end user, a person that's actually making and utilizing all the different machines from OEMs, like you just described, Ryan. Yeah. Is it the OEM's responsibility? Is it the user's responsibility? Like, is it everybody's responsibility? How does it all work? How does it all play out? I don't know.
I think there's. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, as one of the OEMs in the picture here. That's definitely a struggle that we have, right? We know what to do with the data ourselves, but how do we best apply something to our equipment so that it makes sense for end customers, and so they also fit into whatever their current strategy is? That's one of the main things I think that's still missing is not just standardization of the data, but also standardization of protocols. Or something around that, so the machines that an OEM provide fit in. I'm not saying they don't fit in, because we're talking about 40 years of at least of technology that we've been used to, which is like OPC, Modbus, Profibus, whatever. So data is available from every machine, right? It's just not. You can't just point to it and here it is, right? There has to be some workaround. Especially like if it's not OPC, if you don't have a namespace that's exposed, you got to now go look at documentation and figure out, okay, here's the Modbus map, and here are the ports that I need to connect to, and here's the addresses that I need to pull, et cetera, right? So that's one thing for OEMs is what's the next step when you're talking about Industry 4.0 IoT? What is it that makes sense for our end customers? And it's not just OPC UA. Because again, our raw data is definitely something that's easy enough for our customers to pull if it's Modbus or OPC UA or something else. But we get more customers more and more coming to us. We know you're pulling data up into your cloud. You're doing something with it. We want to get access to that. And that's a tricky part because we could absolutely do that, and in most cases we would have to engineer a solution almost per customer because they're all going to be different. They're all going to have different systems that they want to utilize to connect to our system, to our data, and so we're missing that standard component that integrates an OEM back into the end customers.
Yeah, I got it. Just talk to Jason. He's talked to all the different people that can do cognitive AI. Put that on there. That way it can become self-aware to figure out how to do all the data.
Amazing.
Oh, that just happened.
I think that's a real problem, though. Yeah, like you mentioned, right? There's internal initiatives at this manufacturer end user part, right? And then you have your smart solution. So we work with a lot of machine builders, and it's becoming much more common for these standard or even custom machine builders to just stick a gateway in the panel for remote service, right? So right now, when I was selling machinery, I would get a customer call me angry, panic, production stopped. This thing isn't working, blah, 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 some curse words. And then I'd call our service manager. Hey, they do some phone troubleshooting. They're flying blind, though, at that point. And then they'll just dispatch a technician to fly last minute. So it's production downtime. There's this poor customer experience. Now I'm seeing a lot more machine builders stick a gateway in the panel, have remote VPN access so that they can get at least some data, do some light PLC troubleshooting, things like that. And then also there's some customers will give like a cloud-based dashboard of that kind of analytics for their customers. And so it would be underneath them in the hierarchy. So they would have access to some data that the customers care about, but then the OEM has all the data flowing up to their dashboards and their analytics.
Exactly.
But then you also have the edge capabilities. If they have their own edge-based system at that end user, well, now you're going to have to find your strategy. Like you had mentioned, is it OPC connector based? Are you doing MQTT? And the other challenge is, once again, what are you going to do with your service department with all your legacy systems in the machine from 20 years ago? Well, now you're converting that Profibus communication to MQTT, and you're going to have to use some sort of IoT platform solution to do that. But every project's going to look different. And I've never seen a true standard machine be offered to an end user without modifying register values or integrating different process controls. So it really takes a team of the end user manufacturer having a controls and some sort of IoT architect and understanding what data is important to us. What do we want to see? What data do we want to process locally? And then what do you want as a machine builder? And what are you paying attention to? Because those things aren't always the same thing, right?
You did bring up an interesting topic to me too, is that I'm hearing more and more that companies are talking about MQTT in the plant floor.
Mm-hmm.
So MQTT has been the protocol of choice for anybody that, especially OEMs that need to pull data into their own cloud. That's just been kind of what we've all been working on. But it was still, for a very long period of time, it was still OPC or something else on the plant floor. But now I hear more and more that companies talking about, oh yeah, we're just doing MQTT in the plant floor. So to me, what would be interesting is the PLC vendors starting to think about that. Are you getting PLCs that has MQTT as one of the protocols that it supports? Or when you talk about, Honeywell, Rockwell, Schneider, Siemens, ABB, whatever, are they kind of looking at that? What do you guys see?
I'm seeing OPC integrated into the controllers. I haven't heard much about MQTT yet. But once again, I think that would only be the new equipment rolling out the door.
For sure.
Yeah, and I know you have to start doing it at some point. I'm just always concerned about the legacy stuff. I don't know. It always seems like it's the biggest headache and scaling and that pain point, because I think the newer controllers have a lot more networking capabilities. I don't know about MQTT specifically. I know that at scale, there's a lot of advantages to using MQTT versus OPC UA. But I haven't seen it on any controllers yet. Ira, do you guys plan on putting MQTT in your stuff yet? I'd be curious on your thoughts.
Well, I just got to figure out how my co-host doesn't know that my product already has it built in. So we got to have.
I didn't either.
I know your product has it. The open protocols are kind of going that direction. I'm more looking for the traditional ones. That's not the open.
Yeah, I know of a large manufacturer that is pushing a legacy PLC manufacturer to put MQTT on their platforms, and they've already threatened them, saying if we don't see this come out, we're moving away because we need it.
Yeah. And I'll say, like, so in all seriousness, so of course Phoenix Contact, PLC Next, but then there's other ones out there too, Opto 22 with the Epic Groove and these things that definitely have MQTT built in, and they can be a PLC, but the controller itself, in a lot of cases, Ryan, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I'm interested in Scott's opinion on this too, because of his dealings locally and and actually working on some systems in the accelerator program and things. But just real quick, is a lot of times the controller that I would have, while it natively supports both OPC UA and MQTT, sometimes it's used as a PLC, other times it's just used as a gateway. Because that way it hits that brownfield and new build, because it'll be used in brownfield applications and it'll talk to the existing Siemens, Rockwell, Schneider. We know that those are the big players that are out there, right? And it can be used as an alternative to that to collect the data and move it. And then in new builds, it could be the on scale or the scale up of being the controller itself. So it does provide kind of like that transition type of platform for you, and we have seen some users adapt to that, and OEMs adapt to that because it gives them more flexibility kind of moving forward, because it gives them that direct capability right on the machine itself. Scott, from your standpoint of like the accelerator, and are these topics that you're coming across and challenges that you're hitting overall?
You know, I would say to a large degree, no. What I mean by that is we talked about 30 manufacturers. Remember, we're up in Michigan, so we're largely automotive that we're talking to. We're talking to Ford, GM, Lear, Magna, Forvia, companies like that. We're also talking to Whirlpool, Steelcase, and some other big companies in big industries. And it depends who our point of contact is. Usually we're talking with the head of advanced manufacturing or innovation or industry 4.0, or sometimes we're talking to corporate venture capital. On the occasion where we're talking to somebody that's got an IT hat they wear, these topics do come up. You know, if we're talking to the head of global networks for BorgWarner or something, they're thinking about all the things that we've been talking about here. But what I'll do at the risk of taking this conversation a different way, if you're interested, is I'll talk about the 4 or 5 categories that are coming up the most, kind of in the world of technology. So, and again, with a caveat that, you know, we're talking to heavy discrete manufacturing up here in Michigan, you know, supply chain players, tier 1, tier 2 OEMs in aerospace, automotive, and industries like that. So what I'll do really quickly is I'll just give you 5 categories we track. You can go to our website, which is i40accelerator.com, and you can see the companies we talk to and interview bi-monthly, and you can see the tech clients that we've recruited from around the world. But we track about 8 or 9 categories. I'm going to give you the 4 or 5 that come up the most in our conversations over the last probably 6 months. So the first is human motion analysis. So this is the idea of automating industrial engineering, you know, looking at human motion on the line, looking for takt time reduction, safety issues, ergonomics, and things like that. I'll just give you 3 players for each of these categories. So, and I'm happy to answer questions, but 3 companies that play in that space are Invisible AI, Kenda, and Foxconn.ai. Another area that it's not going to surprise anybody is autonomous robotics and material handling. If I think of the Automate show, Jan, you were asking about the last big show I was at was Automate in the spring. You know, what I noticed about that show was just, you know, ubiquitous cobot arms and ubiquitous AMRs. And what's different than 4 or 5 years ago is that those solutions aren't really gaining traction on their own because they've become commodities. But what you saw at Automate this year was you saw people adding AI and machine vision to solutions that involved AMRs and cobots and creating integrated solutions. And so you rarely see a booth anymore with just universal robots or anybody alone. You see booths where 4 or 5 solution partners are together. And so I would say that was what was very different to me at Automate. But 3 companies in our portfolio in that space that address it uniquely are Olus Robotics out of Seattle, Inexpect, which is out of Italy now with an office in Wisconsin, and WheelMe, which is out of Norway, but now with a base here in the Detroit area. So 3rd category is automated inspection, detection, and metrology. That's, you know, just growing. You know, people they don't have people to do manual automation and inspection anymore, so it's got to be automated. So 3 companies there to look at are UnitX, Detect It, and LinCode. The 4th category is mixed reality-based training, work instructions, and remote collaboration. So these are companies using AR, VR tools to do any of those 3 things. There's certainly a lot of incumbents out there, but 3 startups to look at there are DeepHow, Squint out of Silicon Valley, and Elm Park Labs. And then the 5th is just digital twins. That's the one probably coming up more and more versus 6 months or a year ago. From all different respects, from capturing data, 3D scanning, to building mesh clouds, to, you know, pulling in CAD and creating 3D virtual environments to look at movement through a plant or redesign. 3 companies to look at there are Preview 3D, Worlds, and SkillReal out of Israel. So I know that's a big brain dump there, but if you'd like me to elaborate on any of those categories, those are the 5 categories that are probably growing in popularity, and the 5 categories where we're scouting the most globally to find more solutions.
So again, you're actually on mute. But But Scott, on that, so one of the things that Ryan mentioned was about the data being a problem. And the one thing that I always understood about some of the automotives is that data is not so much the problem there. They seem like they've had data for quite a while. I'm not saying that's true of other industries and other manufacturing areas and these kind of things, but it seems like in general, automotive, and that's kind of your world up there, they have some data. Is that a true statement? And maybe that's fueling the ability for some of these companies to go?
I think it's really a function of size. So we think of the supply chain as the bigs, the mids, and the small, mediums, or SMMs. The bigs, this is not an issue, right? They're pretty literate with their data. They've got all the process control systems and integration in-house. The mid-sized manufacturers lean on system integrators, third parties to help them a lot of times with their data architecture. The smalls are the ones who struggle. Right. And so in Michigan, we have 13,000 manufacturers. 85% of them are smalls. They're 200 people and less. And yet they're in the supply chain for the bigs. They're the ones that lack the bandwidth and knowledge to, with all the data silos. So it depends on the size of the company we're talking to. The bigs, it's just a no-brainer. I mean, they don't have any issue with how they're collecting their data and how well they're integrating it. The mids, are bringing that capability in-house or using third-party system integrators or consultants. The smalls really struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that was my experience when I was up in Michigan too. I was up there for 12 years. It was amazing how much equipment is sourced from just the cornfields of Ohio, with like 10 people building these really complex machines in a shop, just jamming out to music. And these are the guys, when I talk to them, they're the ones doing these data strategies, right? And they're the ones that are really having these small to medium-sized manufacturers who are leaning heavily on them. And so it's kind of interesting that they don't have those dedicated resources, that advanced manufacturing engineering team to lean on. They don't have this large IT resource group where, okay, you could say, define the standards or define the strategy. No, they're just worried about, okay, there's a new model refresh for this like mirror that they're supplying or this one little widget. How are they going to meet their production and get parts out the door is what they're usually worried about.
Well, I think three things we see a lot when we're dealing with smaller manufacturers, three places they have gaps are from an IT standpoint. Even if they had IT in-house years ago, they outsourced it to a managed service provider. So they've lost whatever IT, in-depth capability they've had. They usually have very little OT systems integration in-house, and they can't afford the system integrators because the big guys in the mids consume all the system integrators and they can't pay the rates to get them. And then the machines they're using, they're buying machines at auction, right? CNCs and stuff that are really old vintage. And just getting them up to minimal usable space, so they're not getting the latest architecture, and they can't afford to buy equipment new with the latest information technology.
Yeah, a lot of those large companies have machine graveyards too, that they just go out. It's like a junkyard, and they'll just start pulling components off of random machines, right? Yeah. And Frankensteining some stuff together. So I always thought that was pretty clever. But yeah, to your point, I mean, they could be using a 20-year-old controller with 5-year-old technology, and now they're getting all those things to work. And good luck pulling data off of that.
That's right.
So I know, Ryan, you have in the past shown a couple of videos where you were connecting to data sources and trying to automate how to get data. And we mentioned generative AI before, because one of the main goals is really understanding the data, oftentimes if you want to do something with it. So what are you guys thinking about generative AI being part of that, especially for small and medium-sized manufacturers, to have some new tools that are utilized to be able to connect to various different data sources and assets out there and kind of find the way to pull the data? For example, like, I could see browsing a Modbus data space and figure out where the data is and what kind of data is there, and then something like that. I don't know. What do you guys think? Does that sound like completely crazy, or is that maybe something that could be a future aspect of getting some of these smaller companies easy up and going?
Yeah, I think I think it's definitely something. There's always like you can either back into the problem or look at the data available and try and grab insights from that, right? So I love seeing all the data points, right? I sold all the different sensors, the cameras, and so when I'm looking at a process, if it's injection molding, I'm paying attention to maybe temperature. I'm looking for short shots. I'm looking for certain common failures depending on that process or that part that they're creating. So I think a lot of these small to medium-sized businesses, they know their quality issues, but to your point, they don't know what data is available on them. So yeah, I think just exposing them and doing an educational, here's how you explore the data, and then here's how you would build a simple program to offer those insights or recommendations, even if it's not some sort of closed loop. Okay, if this fails, turn something, even just bringing insights and awareness to the operator on some sort of HMI, I think would go a long way for these companies.
Yeah, what do the rest of you guys think?
I would say generative AI for the small manufacturer has a great benefit to them, but again, they don't know how to access their data, how to structure it, how to contextualize it, because nobody's talking to them about how to do that. Nobody's showing them how to set it up. The other thing is a lot of the people that are out there selling it, I think they're setting a lot of these companies up for immediate failure, because part of the draw of generative AI is its simplicity of use, that anybody can jump in and use it. But that's also part of its crux, is that it's simple. So if you're not a domain expert in what you're working on, the good chances are you're going to get wrong information. And that wrong information is going to lead you down a path that you don't want. And generative AI, it's a multiplier. So if you had a small problem and you set it up wrong, you now have a extremely large problem. So,
Yeah.
People aren't talking to companies about how to effectively use it. They're just talking to them saying, hey, this is going to bring you this value. You can do this. And they're showing shots of, somebody talking out a problem, but they're not actually addressing and showing them how to properly use it and properly interact with it, and who should be training your model.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's and so from my standpoint, that's where I think, and I hinted on this earlier about OEMs versus users, and I think there's a lot of push from a end user perspective to do this, because that's where it's easier to get data. I think I'm not saying that it's available, but it's high level. You can get more data. But from an OEM perspective, you have a smaller system, you have a repeatable system in a lot of cases that you know a lot about, and if you want to fine tune that more and more, to Jason's point, you could make a better mousetrap, and you could refine that mousetrap with the number of components that you're shipping out the door. So I think there's an opportunity from a generative AI perspective to work on smaller OEM machines that can help them perform better over time, if a user will allow it to happen, which is a big question. And I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure how well that's being adopted, because a lot of users will be protective of the data and not want it to leave their facility, or want to provide information that's going on, or whatever else. And you really need a crowdsource. There's a reason, for example, Tesla, which I know is not in the it is in the manufacturing space, but you look at their machine of the Teslas they sell to consumers, and how much data they collect on those Teslas, and how well they're interacting, and then they send all that data back. And now they built the world's third or fifth biggest supercomputer to be able to churn through all that data to better tune their AI algorithms locally in the cars to be able to perform better. I see that no different than any manufacturer in the manufacturer space, and a machine that they're producing going into a facility. The question is, are the users of those machines, like a user of a Tesla, willing to opt in to provide their data back to the mothership to be able to use that to further refine? So that's where I think this generative AI and local AI and these kind of things could pay massive dividends, but it's going to take some time, and I don't think it's going to have that quick hit that maybe the overall industry expects. And it all comes back to the core of data, to information, to then utilizing that information to make a meaningful change in operation.
Yeah, with the generative AI, it's really the critical part is how you put the learning into the model, right? And so I worked almost my entire career on data, especially working with process historians, right? There's always been that idea of being able to connect to any data source and just auto detect all the data points and figure out what they mean, and then put them into the historian, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you think about generative AI, there's a potential there to actually teach the model about all different types of equipment out there and what the current data points are and what they're called and what they mean, etc., to the point where you could potentially connect to an OPC data source and figure out, what, this is a pump, and here is the 10 data points that is relevant, and I'm going to pull them into my data source, and now I can have some other generative AI sitting on top of that data and doing whatever you want. But just a generative AI that could kind of auto detect the data that's coming out of the equipment and connect to it. That was my thought around that whole small and medium size, having some element where it could be easy for them. But you will have to start building that model. You mentioned crowdsource, Ira. Absolutely, that'll be the perfect scenario to really just push a whole lot of Modbus maps and OPC data source tags, etc., whatever, into a system, and so it would learn all it could about different types of equipment out there, how to connect to it, and what the data means when you connect to it.
Yeah, I think one of the critical part is, I think Jason may have mentioned it earlier, make sure you have someone that knows what they're doing, like a controls engineer and someone with this industry experience. I think anyone who's used ChatGPT knows that it can be wrong. It can be really wrong, right? Yep. And so in the case of manufacturing, that stopped production, that's crashing machines, that's breaking tooling, that's breaking dies. Those are expensive long-term mistakes. Absolutely. And you really want to make sure we have, for example, we have like a power energy monitoring solution that we came out with at Telit. And we look at all of these power factor ratios, and then we use ChatGPT to make recommendations, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. This is what you can do to improve your power factor ratio. This is what, like, these step-by-steps. But that's got to be done by a qualified technician. I'm not going to be the one going in the field, right? It's saying research this stuff. Don't do this, right? And I think as long as you double check the recommendations, that might even get you down the right path, right? So as long as these companies get it close, and give a starting point to research and dig in more, I think that'll be a good first step until you get these kind of rock solid solutions where it's more comfortable and getting better with the recommendations for them.
No, absolutely. You almost got to be your own SME on the topic that you're researching with ChatGPT, right? You want to make sure that to me today, it's a tool. Mm-hmm. It can speed something up a little bit, but you still got to be the one that's going through the result to make sure that result sounds reasonable, that you know that it's actually correct. And then make sure that you have some idea what the sources was for the information that you got, right? Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I think the other thing people got to think of when they deploy generative AI is you got to build in an escalation method. There's got to be a way to escalate it to the right individuals with the right knowledge to verify. You can't just assume that the verification is going to be done correctly. If it's not escalating to the right people, it's a problem.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how fast this whole generative AI has become the most important thing that everybody's talking about right now, and the thing you see almost everywhere. And some, as you mentioned before, Jason, some very interesting applications that almost and sometimes sound a little bit scary. I was seeing one the other day, which is kind of not automation, but still we've mentioned Tesla before. This was it was a conversational bot that did not identify itself as a bot, but really, if you didn't know, you would think it was a person. And basically what it did, it called up a person that had just been on the Tesla website, and they had kind of just quickly checked on a Tesla. You may maybe even try to configure one, then they left. But they left with enough information for this bot to call them up, and they called them up and had a conversation. Hey, this is Jason, whatever, I can't remember what he said his name was. But he said, I just saw you on our website and checking out our Tesla model and trying to figure what are we specifically looking for. Then the person says, well, I really don't have time right now. Yeah, I understand that, we're all busy, whatever. And but how about just a couple questions? Do you have time for just a couple questions? And then that conversation goes on for like 15 minutes. And it ends up with that person agrees to get a Tesla salesperson to call them up. And it's just a conversation.
I hope my boss isn't listening. That's all I can say.
I was just going to say, there's
for salespeople out there.
Inside Sales is the Inside Sales AI. It's probably a new edition of Salesforce or something.
Yeah,
that's
very interesting.
So it had a phone conversation with him.
It was a voice. It was a voice. You could hear that there was a little bit of pause every time it had to think about what the response was, but there was a short pause. So when the person talked, then a little pause, then the AI responded, right? And the AI was made so it responded very slowly, so it wasn't talking fast, right? So you would even think that pause was almost natural too. So it was interesting.
It would be really interesting if it could, just thinking ahead, like could it use like the local dialect, like because a New Yorker is going to talk different than someone from Texas, for example.
Accent?
Yeah, like the whole thing. I'm asking. I don't know anything about it, but that would be kind of crazy.
Sure can. I mean, today you can record your own voice, and then that would be the voice that would be spoken afterwards. So, and that could be in any accent. It'll be interesting to see how the English sounds like. I'll try it maybe sometime, put my voice in, then it'll come back from it. But the first one that I saw, the Tesla one, was actually with a British voice, and then there was another one I saw later on a different type of product, which was an American voice.
Wow.
But yeah, no.
Why do I feel like this is going to be a thing soon where everyone's going to do like accent AI? We're going to be on Zoom calls. I'm going British every time. British.
Oh, no.
New Zealand. Those are my
avatars. I heard somebody talk about avatars. So you create your own avatar on Teams, and then you don't have to attend. Your avatar does, and the avatar does. It knows you. It knows what you do. It knows what your typical responses are, and that means just after the Teams call, you just get the meeting notes and see what you actually said and see if you were saying something stupid or not. But
probably less stupid, honestly.
Hey, I mean, if I can go to a Teams meeting and just spend 5 minutes to see what the responses were, but
not actually on this call right now. This is my avatar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then you always like oftentimes triple books, and I can be in 3 Teams calls at the same time.
Scaling yourself, no. Because as a salesperson, I'm like, great. There goes Ryan. You're only doing 18 meetings a day. We need you to bump up those numbers. Yes. I see you only have 4 scheduled at 1:00. That's a scary AI feature.
That's pretty scary, yeah. But I mean, you will see some of those generative AI bots starting to know you as a person better, right? Mm-hmm. Not necessarily to impersonate you at a Teams call, but knowing what your favorites are and what you're looking for and what you're currently interested in, whatever, and kind of pull some of that information back.
So personally, I'm really excited for that. Looking at the language models, right, the LLMs, and that's largely a lot of what we've been talking about here. And I'd love for something to be able to look at my OneNote, notebook and emails, and me to even ask the question of, well, hey, when was the last time that I talked about XYZ with this customer? Boom, there it is. Mm-hmm. That'd be really nice even for myself to talk to my AI self. Is that weird? Does that put you in a white room? I'm not sure, but.
Well, when you talk about salespeople before, right? One of the reasons why I don't feel I'm a salesperson at all is I'm not very good at remembering those details. Like, a salesperson, a very good salesperson knows what your kids' names are and what you last talked with the person about and how they're doing in college, whatever. Just think about the Elon Musk implant with a language learning model in it that listens to everything you say, and it will automatically tell, yeah, this is Jason Bean, and by the way, his kid has just gone to college or whatever, and then you ask a question, so how's your kid doing in college? Whatever. Oh, you remember that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of interesting aspects of these new AIs for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they do have those new glasses, right? Didn't Meta just release the glasses?
Yeah, the Ray-Ban, the Ray-Ban was interesting.
I went and checked them out yesterday. I've had them in hand a few times. I'm just like, I don't know about this, Ryan. I don't know about this.
So Ryan will have them the next call, is what he just said.
That's usually what happens. Yeah, I've seen it 2 or 3 times. I've went to the store and I'm like, not today, Ryan, not today. But most likely this weekend. Yeah, that's a problem.
How much are those glasses actually?
I think they're like $300. It's got 2 camera. Well, if you look at the cost of normal Ray-Bans and then the upsell on them, because there's already a premium, and it's got 2 cameras on it. And I was interested because I saw someone post on Instagram they were at their kid's like football game, and the video quality looked pretty good. And I was like, well, that's convenient because I hate doing this. I hate doing this. But also then, like, when people know that you have 2 cameras on you all the time, they might be like, well, are you recording this? Like, so that's kind of that's our only hesitation. But yeah.
And it's a little bit more hidden, right? Compared to the Google Glass, whatever. That was pretty obvious that you had a camera going on. This is more hidden, kind of.
Yeah, they put them kind of. There's like 2 cameras at like the corner of the frames of the glasses that are pretty hidden. Yeah, it's not as. They look like regular Ray-Bans until you're up close.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just saw it being announced. It's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of stuff going on in that arena, like the Apple, what's it called, Vision or whatever, or iVision or something.
Yeah, that'll be cool, and $6,000. Cool,
but outside out of our range for sure for quite a while. At least mine.
Probably
a while to convince my wife that I need one of those. That's for sure.
Just walk around with ski goggles on all the time. It works for Jason. He's up in Canada, so he can.
Not so much in Texas. It's hot here. Oh man. Yeah, that's fun.
So it seems like this conversation kind of directed itself into generative AI, like every other conversation that we seem to have these days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just amazing how much that impacts everything we do. I was on a meetup just a week ago where Google was presenting generative AI. I was on another one the week before, and it automatically came up as the main topic as well. It's just amazing how that everybody seems to be playing with it in some way or another right now, including myself.
So taking a step back from generative AI, just real quick, I saw this the other day in my actual office, in our manufacturing facility, on a tour where we've added AR, and it was locally developed. So it was on an iPad. So you can hold an iPad up to the machine, and it would target on the machine, and then would give you instructions at various points of the machine. And then you could go in closer on each parts of the machine, and then it would actually give you different signals on the machine itself, and you could pull up instant documentation, all the the parts, all these other things. You could order things. You could figure out how to service and maintain it. So some pretty cool stuff that was all tied together. It was just a small prototype that was being done, but I thought was absolutely phenomenal. From an AR perspective of a real application that had real meaning to the operators on the floor. So it was pretty cool stuff.
I think
that Automate Eclipse Automation had a really good AR demo there, and I'm kind of lucky. They sit in my backyard, so if I really want to go see it again, I just have to jump in the car and drive 5 minutes.
I'm also interested in the scalability of those solutions. Because they show up very, very well. I'm just always thinking back, what did it take to develop this solution? How much input do you have to put in to get it to understand? some equipment can be pretty complex, right? So a large piece of equipment, all the different corners of it, and what data points would you show where, and how do you identify that, and how you then scale that to not just this piece of equipment, but 100 pieces of equipment that you have in your factory, or if you're an OEM, 50 different models that you supply. How do you scale it? It's always interesting to me. I never really gotten a chance to really dig into how you create those systems and how easy or hard they are to configure.
Well, it always comes down to me, who benefits from this, right? Who holds the value where it's worth investing in building this library and building out all of that reference, right? And I think this is where I would love to see an electrical distributor step up. Think about how many different components they supply to all of these different manufacturers, all of the different product lines they have. Now, if I were an electrical distributor, I would want to do something like have AI run a sensor and asset health on their equipment, generate a report, send a purchase order to me, right? Just turnkey, make it as easy as possible, right? Do some preventative, predictive maintenance. That I think would be worthwhile, the investment, to map all of those parts, understand, okay, here's the part, here the part number, here's the manufacturer. By the way, here's the data sheet. All of that's attached to it, right? I would love to see something like that, because then it's a win for the customer. They're not having to spend the time troubleshooting the device. They're not having to do these maintenance runs. They're not constantly monitoring. They say, okay, I have a service provider for that, right? You're not just commoditized, okay, price shop, send it to this, right? Now it's like, okay, this is automated. It's automatically generating purchase orders. Like, I don't have to worry about constantly troubleshooting things. I think that's where I'd love to see.
So Ryan, as you go out there and pitch that idea, or maybe anybody that's listening to this, it's vendor managed inventory 4.0. So
there you go. VMI 4.0. I want that. Generate the purchase order, have it pop out of the vending machine on site. That's what I want.
Yeah, absolutely.
3D printer right there.
Yep, 3D print.
So I was actually working on a project like that with a manufacturer pre-pandemic. We were looking at how do we take their system and have it pre-order the parts and come in and it hits the floor, the shop, the work order's already produced, the parts there when it's supposed to be, everything's, all the work instructions on how to replace it, you name it, everything fully 100% automated.
That's awesome.
That's great.
And then the pandemic hit, the person retired, and it went into oblivion.
Oh no!
That happened. Yeah.
Couldn't deal with the lead times.
Yeah, think about your example, Ira. I think there's a great opportunity there for manufacturers to start. If there was a tool like that where some of this, Gen Xers or older that are going to retire, maybe not too long from now, could have a tool where they kind of walk through and identify the machine, the points of the machine, connect to documentation, enter their own little scripts, whatever, to do things, and then save that for posterity when somebody else needs to take over. That was not a bad idea, actually.
So I know we're running end of time here, but that's where I don't know enough about it, but I posted this the other day about like a machine personal assistant. And I think Tulip has something that's kind of like in this road.
That's what I heard too. Yeah.
And I think if you took some of those experienced operators and let them run the machines and it learned what they were doing, and that fed an LLM so that later on, when things happen, it could help instruct someone, or if things come up, hey, I'm seeing this or whatever else, it could really help that, what I called brain drain from the manufacturing environment. I don't know if it certainly wouldn't solve it, because it would just be yet another tool. But rather than sit there and try to interview people for hours on end and all these pieces, if you just naturally collected the data and just let people do their job, and it saw these kinds of things and recorded it, it could be immensely valuable. The problem is ROI, right? So you're going to have no ROI on it for a long time, because you got to let it learn.
Absolutely. Yeah. But you have a huge ROI when that person retires, right?
Right. Yeah. So
I'm going to say Scott's got a company that I know they work with that looks at that, at knowledge transfer from senior employees to the new employees, right? So,
Yep. Yeah, Squint. I take a look at Squint. They do a lot of what Ira you were just mentioning.
Okay.
Yeah, that I met him at in Greenville last year.
Yeah.
At Southtech, I think very interesting company too. Yeah, we are at the end here of our scheduled live stream. This has been great. It's been really great to get back into it. I've been itching to get back to. I don't know how you feel, Ira, but it's been good to get back
Absolutely.
into this. Have a conversation with some smart people here. And we are definitely striving to continue this now going forward again. And looking forward to having more of these types of conversations. I'll definitely here thank our three co-founders as our esteemed guests here today, Jason Bean, Ryan Treece, and Scott Phillips. And thanks for joining, and thanks for providing your insights. And again, thanks Ira for being co-host again, and we'll hopefully come up with a great topic here in a couple of weeks, and have some interesting guests. And I know we have a couple of series that we're planning, so more to come on that, and we'll be communicating that very soon as well.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Always
Everybody have a
fun.
good one.
Thanks so much. Looking forward to the future shows.
All right.
Have
Yep.
a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.